Emre, welcome to the podcast.
Hey man.
You are talking to us from the UK, are you not?
Yeah, in London.
Right off the top, I got to thank our mutual friend Ian Shepherd for introducing us, and many thanks to you for responding so rapidly to, hey, want to get on the show? What are you doing
man.
this week?
For real. Absolutely.
It's very typical of me, like, hey, I just got introduced to you. Do you want to come on my show right now?
Yes, please. An honor to be on. For real. Absolutely.
Well, so let's talk about the state of the state, which is the current day happenings, so we can kind of get a sense of what your world is like today. So what do you consider yourself? We already know you're based in London. And what are you doing these days? What's happening for you?
Yeah. I have a weird, varied career, which is, I guess it's really fun now, but I do quite a lot of drumming, session drumming, and play live with my band, and then do a absolute ton of Atmos mixing for the last 3 years, must be something like that. Yeah, I'm doing a huge amount of that, and then still loads of stereo stuff as well, mastering and a lot of stereo mixing alongside, and not so much production nowadays, but occasionally even some tracking. Like next week, I'll spend the whole week I'm tracking in strong room studios for a week. It's great, remembering how to do that. But yeah, sort of quite varied.
When you're mixing in Atmos, where is that mixing room located?
That's in Hampstead in London. It's
okay. Separate from where you live?
Yeah, at the moment, yeah.
Okay. Do we know some of your clients? Are some of your clients famous?
Yeah, yeah. I think so. Atmos has been wild for that, and stereo was pretty great. But I mean, recently with Atmos, it's been I've done a lot with Brian Eno recently, which has been a dream. He's one of my favorite artists, and he delivers. It's been an amazing experience. He's been mixing immersively for 30 years, so it's exciting.
I have 2 of his box sets right up here on the shelf.
Amazing. Yeah, I got to remix in Atmos Another Green World, and which was the hardest thing I've ever done, ever in audio, by a way, was getting the multi-tracks, which took them, I'm going to say, I think it took Rhett Davies and the team maybe 6 to 9 months to find them and piece them together. And I didn't really understand why until I got sent one of the first tracks, and Rhett's going, I'm pretty sure this is this. And he sent some track sheets over, which were great. In fact, no, he didn't send track sheets. This is the kicker. So I got sent the multi-track, which is 24 often, and sometimes 16. And you press play. I had no idea what it was. Nothing, no idea. It was the biggest detective puzzle I've ever had, because it wasn't like the kind of 70s dream you hear of committed, fade us up, done, fade us up. I don't know what tune this is, not done, It was insane. Like, some of them would have 24 tracks taken and use 6 with 10 tape edits within them. So I'd be given 9 minutes of multi-track, and the track was a minute, but the whole 9 minutes was needed to find all the parts they used to make the track. Then vari sped throughout, and then I matched the left side first, then the right side, because I matched the stereo mixes before I even start the Atmos. So this was the big process, was matching stereo mixes and mastering, and make sure they were the same length and coherent and the same pitches. And there was so many crazy things I could talk. I could do an hour talk literally just on mixing that record. One of the things was I couldn't find one of the notes on a track called The Ship. It's all built a bit like I'm Not in Love, where it's all the notes they just put down. They would ride the faders to make chords. I think that's kind of what was going on. But I couldn't find one of the notes. It just wasn't on the tape. But I go, there has to be an answer, because it's tape. It's 1974. It's going to be here. There's not tons of stuff added at the mix here. But what it was, I could hear something filtering. One of the notes was filtering down. And so I got a Moog, put it through the Moog, put the resonance up, and that's what he'd done. He'd made a note with the resonance as it was filtering, and that made the chord. So it was that kind of, it was so hard. Some things were 100% plate, gold 4 plate, but Rhett had sent me a picture of the studio. It says, this is all we had. We had 2 1176s, we had an H910, we had a gold 4 plate, and we had 2 Pultecs. There was nothing else. That's all we used. which actually wasn't entirely true, because there was one sound, which is a very brilliant engineer here called Tristan Norwell, who's now runs incredible post-production place here. He came in and I was listening going, I don't know what this is. It might be an EMS synthy, but it's this kind of thing in one of the songs. Oh, the title is Fish in the Title. I can't remember. I'm terrible like this with names. But it was a kind of sound. And Tris went, that's a modulating delay. And I was like, no. And it turns out it was a pedal. And Waves H delay was so close. I was like, oh my God. I could just... There it is, off one of the sounds. There was this synth that I couldn't find, you know, and it was just all this. And eventually Rhett came in and we played back the mixes and he was like, it's cool. I was like, thank God, because that was the most terrifying, longest, hardest kind of matching. And then I did the Atmos, which was interesting. I've been blessed, but I did Ziggy Stardust with Ken Scott, which was, which I mean, if you want to get a dream gig in Atmos, it's like that would be. So it's a moderately amusing story of being at an awards thing with my friend Guy Massey, who said you should chat to this guy, and I talked to a lovely old gentleman who was chatting about thinking I'm not sure about Atmos and maybe we can. So I had a chat and I was a little bit inebriated. And I chatted for 45 minutes, full ball, blah this, blah that, my opinion, this is, I don't know, I would do it like this. No, you got to respect the artist, blah. And I did my whole kind of fairly passionate spiel about what I feel about the issues with Atmos were at the time, which is a couple of years ago, and how you know, I really wanted to preserve the vision, but you know, you can try new things, but only if the guy who made the record's there, and all kinds of this kind of stuff that I sort of felt passionately about. And then he went to the loo, and I was like, who the hell's that guy? And the guy was laughing, going, that's Ken Scott. So, oh, no. And I replayed in my mind 45 minutes of ranting of what did I say? And I thought nothing more of it. And then 6 months later, I get a call going, is this him? I go, yeah. He says, this is Ken Scott. I wonder if you'd like to mix Ziggy Stardust. We start in a week. And I was like, yes, I would very much like to do that, please. And off we went to Rack Studios and we spent 10 hours a day sat without moving with Ken's head here behind me, and we just mixed a record from the multitrack, and we were finishing each other's sentences on about the first or second day, and half a dB tank, and it was magical, like absolutely magical. And he was unbelievable throughout the whole thing, and I couldn't believe what he was hearing and how he was doing stuff and how open he was, and it was an incredible experience. Genuinely.
So needless to say, your day-to-day life is working out pretty well right now.
It's been much worse. I can tell you that. It's been great.
Let's go back in time. Let's talk about it. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in, I was born in Turkey for about a year and a half, and there was a civil war there in the 1800s when I was born, but it was
don't do that when I'm drinking coffee, man.
And we moved to Portsmouth, the south coast, and I grew up in Portsmouth, which is kind of like a rough naval town, which I left the second I could, even though I'm sure there's lovely parts of it. I left. I was teaching drums then at 17, 18. I was teaching drums in schools, and I was earning, you know, crazy money for an 18-year-old. Because I'd started playing, and you get a great hourly rate when I was a kid. So I kept on doing this teaching, and then I went to university, but I wanted to keep teaching. So I went to university close and did a psychology degree. But what I really did was find the local jazz scene and learn to play. And I did 280 gigs in my last 3 semesters of university and went to one lecture, you know, so I knew what I wanted to do very strongly. And I moved to London to kind of make dance music, which I didn't really want to do, but play drums, which I really did want to do. And I had an incredible meeting very early on. There was a band called Sneaker Pimps, which was very popular at the time. And I accidentally moved next door to my friend who was living with them and living with some comedians who turned out to end up being the Mighty Boosh, which was a very popular comedy thing here. And I got very friendly with Dave, who was an unbelievable drummer. He was so great. And he got ill, and I dipped for the Sneaker Pimps for a gig. Overnight, I had to learn all these tunes, so I felt, you know, I could do it. And I met their producer, I'm bumbling up some of the time zone, but I ended up being in Jim Abbas's band, who was an incredible engineer and producer, Adele, the Arctic Monkeys, Kasabian, all these kind of incredible things. I had this lovely little meetup. And effectively sort of everything came from there. But around that time, the important thing I'm bumbling towards is I met an incredible session drummer here called Andy Gangadine, who was one of my drum heroes at the time. And he said, "Oh, come down, I'm rehearsing at this place and hang out." So I came and sat down, and he said, "Oh, play a bit." And I played his monster kit, and he was like, "Wow, yeah, you shouldn't do drums." And I was like, "What?" I was cut. I was like, "Oh no." He goes, No. He says, you can do this. Don't do it. Because you have the studio thing. Do that. You could get waylaid into playing session drums for the next 10 years. You need to do the studio thing. Because the drums is great. You can play, you can do things, do sessions, but don't go off and do touring drumming. It's a nightmare. I've done it all my life. Don't do it. Go in the studio, work that angle. He was amazing. And so I listened to him and I was like, okay. He ended up coming to my gigs and watching me play drum. It was just, I owe him so much for his very quiet little advice 25 years ago or something, you know. And he was absolutely right. You know, it's like, go to the studio. So that's where I focused, and that's how it led.
I want to go back into your upbringing. Your family, brothers, sisters.
I've got an amazing brother, a younger brother.
Younger brother. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about the role of any kind of music, technology, art, anything like that growing up, or did you have strict parents? Were they encouraging?
Both.
Tell me about all that.
I have an amazing family. That's the luckiest thing in my whole life is I have an incredible family, and everyone, extended family, there's no problems. Everyone loves everyone. It's awesome. It's an incredible place to come from. Safe, secure, they're brilliant. They're hella strict, and they are both academics. So it's this kind of, and in the nicest way, I love you, mum and dad, not musical at all. No music playing at home, no real music. Mum had 2 records, which was kind of crazy. She had Jimmy Cliff, The Harder They Come, and I think Herb Alpert.
Of course. Of course.
I mean, The Harder They Come was pretty good. Many Rivers to Cross, Harder They Come, 78. It was awesome. But that was not where my musical love came from. There's a whole kind of stuff going on, like coordination wise and kind of things and issues with writing, which I've later found out what it all is about, like literally 2 years ago. But I was having issues with writing and coordination, but not with learning or anything. So she said, you should learn drums, you know. And so we had a friend who used to be a drummer, and she taught me some drums from the age of 13. And I just picked up the sticks at maybe 13, 14. And I remember being in the loft. They didn't really let me play drums either at home. That was the other thing, this weird kind of they want to help, but also it was annoying for them. And, you know, it's kind of an interesting dynamic. But sitting in my loft one of the times I was able to practice, I just played and went, this is what I'm doing. That's it. I just knew that thing that you hear about, like people know, I just knew what I wanted to do. From then, everything else was dead. That's what I want to do. Don't do anything. Don't care about anything else. This is what I'm doing. And that was it. So I played on pillows, mainly, which ends up being one of my favorite drummers, Dennis Chambers. That was his advice, but I've been doing it for, you know, a long time. So that was my vibe. I just did what I could to make that happen.
On the audio front, though, when I'm always curious about when your awareness or people's awareness in general, where did it begin in terms of recognizing, oh, I like these records. How is this done? Like your awareness of production and recording, and an acknowledgement of, oh, this is something that's interesting to me.
Drums are cool for that, right? It's a 4-inch instrument. It either sucks horribly sound-wise, or you get that bit together. There's no help with drums particularly. You know, you have to work out tonal stuff and balance and a wide range of frequencies. And so my first musical crush for years was Zeppelin, which is a great place for me to start because it doesn't sound exactly real, but it does. So there's a lot of production going on in that kind of way. And it was an amazing start to being really interested in how the hell do you do that? And I remember sitting with the kit trying to make reverb, which I didn't understand what it was, trying to make big room sounds by detuning it and making the snares really loose, and then trying different heads and trying what I could to make the snare go, you know, and have long sustains. And how do you do when the levy breaks with a drum kit in a room? It must just be a kit in a room. That's how drum kits are. And it kind of did as well, you know, under the stairs in Headley Grange, probably, you know, they're capturing what's there, but I didn't have that in my dead living room. So I was trying everything to make the drum sound from the beginning, obsessed with how the drum sounded in the room and what can I do to make them sound the way I wanted, and did everything on a massive journey, which is obviously still going on. But that was obsession. And then around that time, so I'm going to date myself horribly, 4-tracks came out, kind of more available. And I managed to borrow a 4-track. We didn't have loads of money at all, so I managed to borrow one and start recording from almost the same time I started playing. So I was recording immediately, and in parallel, like when I was at university, I managed to get 3 of us to club together and buy an SS3000 Akai sampler and program. And I had an Atari, which I managed to get, and a sampler and my kit, and I was just programming from the very beginning of playing, basically. So I was always paralleling it with the beginnings of engineering and beginnings of mixing and balancing, and that's definitely been the route.
That's an interesting perspective of looking at the drum set and trying to mimic what you're hearing on records in real life.
What the hell I was doing. I don't know what I was doing. I had no idea.
When did you realize, oh, there's more to this?
Because this is like the 80s, you know. It's like the studios were an elite thing. They were not accessible. Production was not accessible. Information was not accessible. It's hard for anyone to imagine now who hasn't grown up with that. I mean, you probably know as well. Like, I wanted to know how an SSL works. I remember this. I was so determined. There was no way of finding out. There was no, unless you sat with one, there was nothing. There was nothing online. There was no internet. There was nothing available. And even if there was internet when in the late 90s, there was nothing about how to operate an SSL. I remember going and tracking down at a trade show, someone from SSL going, can I buy a hardware manual off you so I can work out before I get called to go into studio something? I have to sit there with that crushing feeling of not knowing what I'm doing. Some idea about this, you know, it's like everything was a mission to find everywhere, every single part of everything. So I do remember with instruments and stuff like drums and things, how are people playing that? There was no tab available. There's occasionally little bits, but it was expensive. You know, those drum videos, those drum corps videos are quite expensive in the UK. And I managed to get one maybe on VHS, but there wasn't tab with it necessarily. You didn't have the book, or, you know, it was like the information that you didn't have is so insane when I think about it now. Like trying to find anything at all was incredible. In Portsmouth, there wasn't stuff. There was Rhythm magazine, but it was watching people and listening. So I always just had to listen over everything, which is definitely you don't have to now. But people still do, obviously, but that was the only option, was to listen and try and work out what happened. So I gradually realized I really love this. And just before college, I think, before sixth form college, I think there was my parents let me go to Salford University on a week engineering course. It was engineering and playing, and we got to sit in the studio and record to tape. And it's the first time I ever played with a click. And to say something about my drumming, I heard it on the 2 and 4. So they were like, you're playing on the I mean, I feel the backbeat rather than the 4. So I really remember that. But and I was just obsessed from that moment. It's like, oh my God, there's reverb. Oh, I get it. I can kind of work out what's going on. Oh my God. And then just lost in trying to find out everything.
Can you tell me about your first professional recording experience, whether behind the drum kit or...
Yes, I remember it very much. I'd been programming a lot, and I've been playing drums for people professionally and doing some cool stuff. And then a DJ group called Dirty Beatniks. No, who was it? No, it was Mekon, who was part of, he sort of was one of the originators of Big Beat, which is a big thing, like Fatboy Slim's kind of thing, and that Wall of Sound thing. He hired me to do some fashion shows with him. But the first thing we did, he said, I want to record a guitarist. Can you do that? Yes. Had I ever plugged anything in and recorded anything before? No. Professionally. So I called up my friend Adrian Hall, who was a great, he was then he was one of the engineers at Metropolis Studios, which is a big studio here. And I said, Adi, how do you record guitar? And he went, okay, what have you got? And I said, there's like it's an amp. I can't see it from here. And he said, okay, what mics have you got? And he goes, actually, hang on, who's playing? I went, oh, it's this guy called Adrian Utley. Adrian Utley is a guitarist from Portishead and one of the great guitarists. I didn't know who he was then. So they hadn't told me who it was, and I didn't know that I didn't get the names. And Adi said, oh, it's cool. So get a mic. And I said, which one? He said, any of them, and just put it in front of the amp. How close? Yeah, just close to it. And I did it, and it sounded absolutely insanely good. And I was like, oh my God, I've got this. I'm a natural. Everyone was delighted. Adrian was like, yeah, that sounds great. John was like, that's brilliant. You're hired. Great. Let's go. Let's get on with it. Let's do everything. So I ended up working with John loads. We did loads of fashion show sound design. I've done loads of that interesting stuff. We worked for Alexander McQueen for a long time, and everybody. We've done everything in fashion for these show creations, some of which are unbelievable, huge productions, and some of which are posh DJ mixes. But it's been wild. That world has been wild.
And hilarious that your parents are academics.
Yeah.
And here you are doing music and recording for fashion shows.
Yeah, it's been a journey. But so that story is great because obviously I learned a very valuable lesson when I came to record the next guitarist who wasn't Adrian Utley. And
you weren't so brilliant then, huh?
I wasn't so brilliant at all. And then I had to go, okay. And then call Adi and go, is that because he was great? Yep. How do you record guitar? Right, what's going on? Oh, right, okay, we need to do this. And so I got taught engineering a lot by Adrian over the phone. But at the same time, I have to say, around that time, there was a site which has now changed its name to Gearspace. And it had this brief moment of, I think it was unprecedented who was on there and who was sharing information and how it worked. And you could, hard to explain, but I learned a lot of engineering from that. You would say, oh, this Buzz Audio preamp's really interesting. And Tim would pop up and go, yeah, when I made that, da 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 da. Or, everyone was on there. Mike Shipley was on there, freely giving information, and all these great, incredible engineers chatting about the craft and what you should expect and how. And so I was young, I was 20 or something, and learning this stuff. And then it got, difficult, and the internet became more popular, and it's harder for, people to keep quiet when they maybe should listen and that kind of thing. But it's that was fascinating. So I led this weird path of not being an assistant and being paid from the beginning, which is very blessed, to do a weird combination of kind of session drumming, because I'd done the Sneaker Pimps at that point. So that was a big band, and that was great. That helped with getting some other bits of gigs and playing with Nena Cherry's backing band, who had a drum and bass band, which we went and toured. And they were unbelievable musicians. And I was doing live triggering and just, it was crazy. So I was having these lovely little moments of really embracing everything, but it was crazy hard. And I made almost no money doing this for a while. And I slept on my aunt's floor because she let me come and sleep on her floor, which was unbelievable.
I always feel that and I think we can establish some common ground here because we're both drummers, we're both engineers. And I don't know if it sounds like this didn't happen in the same way for you, but for me, I had an epiphany that I made a record. I produced a record for a band, and I lost all interest in playing drums.
Oh, wow.
And so what's fascinating about your story is that because you told us right at the get-go that you're still playing drums and you're still doing stuff in that realm. So the drumming thing is going for you. Where does the parallel track of audio, does it start to, become the second thing that you're doing, and are the two just completely intertwined on a continual basis?
It depends on what part of the year. Like, I've been unbelievably blessed in the past sort of 5-10 years with the drumming gigs I've been able to do. It's been absolutely beyond my wildest dreams and incredible. I had one of those hilarious situations in the studio where we were doing Noel Gallagher's album with David Holmes, and I do a lot of work with David Holmes, and he's one of my favorite people to work with ever, because he loves drums and he only uses incredible people, and every musician's fabulous, and style wise and taste wise was so intertwined and like all the same things. So this was wonderful. So I was engineering this record, and the drummer actually left, and then Noel turns around and goes, "It would be great if you played drums." And David went, "Ha, here we go," whisked off into the live room, and then he wrote a track with me playing on it. So that was killing. You go, this is great, this is such a great thing, and played on a few tracks on that record, and that was wonderful, and that helps as well. So I ended up doing other incredible stuff with David Holmes, where we ended up doing a in my little room, my 3 meter by 3.5 meter room, U2, we did this thing for the Sphere. I'm just playing some breaks, and that's what it's so crazy. We did all the Killing Eve. I don't know if you've seen that show. Mainly done in my room, my little tiny room, and all these kind of like nice drumming gigs. I'm not going to go on about all the names, but I've done a lot of decent drum sessions, and I tend to get hired for kind of like creative sound-based drums, where you're wanted to be like an old breakbeat but kind of modern. So I'd get hired for that, because I do the engineering side and deliver stems and correct and everything. So that's where they intertwine, and that's my happy place. Is like, if you want me to do drums that don't really sound like the kit, but they sound like something cool, with this whole bunch of processes I've developed over the years, which, depending when this comes out, next week, tiny bit too early,
Monday.
But I can't know what I'm allowed to say NDA wise. Hopefully other people will have access to this idea of drum processing soon. So I've got a whole kind of thing I'm doing when I'm tracking, where I have a lot of parallels going, and I like to track if I'm doing my choice with no real relation to what's going on in the room. So I'm happy to do that as well. I'm happy to do a naturalistic recording, whatever anyone wants, but I'll do a thing where I'll be total transformation of the kit with parallels and everything. So it'll sound, if you want, like an old break, but live, everything captured, done, printed, and it will be coherently sort of transformed into a stylized kind of drum recording with noise, with everything going on. So that's the intermeshing we're sort of talking about, or hinted towards there. That's not just drumming, it's all in one, and how I'm playing. And
there's a lot of it's a combination of playing drums, being the recording engineer, but also doing a little bit of sound design and creativity.
Yeah.
Do you happen to follow Aaron Sterling on Instagram?
No, but I feel like I should.
Shit, where's my phone? I'm sure most people know about this, and I was probably late to the game, and now you're going to be late to the game, but that's okay.
Super late to the game on lots of things.
But you're going to love him. Sterloid, Aaron Sterling, plays with John Mayer, Post Malone, Harry Styles, Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter, Dua Lipa, Lizzie McAlpine, like a ton of people.
Yeah.
But his Instagram page is absolutely fascinating, because he'll be playing drums in wherever he's playing drums, and he's doing the engineering, it seems, and doing a lot of sound design stuff like you're talking about. Seems like when you talk about what you're talking about, I imagine Aaron's doing his thing, and it sounds like you all are birds of a feather.
Oh, that sounds so cool. So I had a little feeling when I first started out that there are so many amazingly talented engineers who are so freaking amazing at capturing the room and capturing a live performance and making something naturalistic, that wasn't the path I'm going to go down, because no one needs another one of those. And frankly, that's not how I hear stuff. And as you probably know as well, or you definitely know, and everyone experienced knows, how you hear stuff is everything. It's like literally everything, and you can fake it, but I don't know if you can make it like that. So it depends how you hear. And I definitely hear I had a really, really massive, profound experience doing. I used to do like when I was really young, like a drama kind of thing, like plays and things, when I was acting kind of stuff, just for the hobby, like as a group to meet people. I went to a boys' school, so I met girls at drama, and other people and other humans, not in my kind of Catholic school that I went to, which is not really my scene. But they had a big dance studio, and I'd never heard Hendrix before at that point, and they played Voodoo Child at unbelievable volume in a cavernous room, and I've never heard anything like it in my life ever, and it just changed me internally, definitely at that point. I was like, this is unbelievable, because it was massively enhanced. It was so crazy sounding and powerful. It was pretty awesome, and so I've had this kind of like big, powerful sound kind of lust ever since, and sort of in a kind of odd way.
Let me quiz you a bit about the studio stuff. So you never had a proper internship, is that correct?
No.
You weren't a T-boy or a runner? Okay. No. And so your foray into the studio was kind of stumbling into it, it sounds like, a little bit, but also not exactly stumbling, because you had an interest in it as well.
I like learn. I'm very lucky. I have a sort of slightly photographic memory for things, and I learn really, really fast. So Jim Abbas needed a Logic programmer and drummer, and he said, "Can you come over in 2 days' time to basically audition for this project?" And I'd never seen Logic before, so I was like, "Oh shit!" I knew Cubase on the Atari, and that's what I knew. So my friend showed me Logic for a day, and I sat hours and hours working it out, and got in, did the drum playing, which is cool, and then used Logic, and he was convinced. And then I learned. I just didn't stop at all trying to learn this. And at that point, he was like, "Do you know Pro Tools?" And I'm like, "I know you well enough to say no, not really, but I'll learn." And then started learning Pro Tools, and had a disastrous first session trying to edit stuff with him on tools. He was very patient and nice, but I didn't know what I was doing. And then I learned that, and I met Neil McClellan, who was an incredible engineer. He did the Prodigy albums and all these kind of amazing nice projects. He's an unbelievable guy, and he was producing or mixing one of the singles in his band with Jim. And he said, "Yeah, can you just DS this vocal?" And I didn't even know what he meant. And we were in Logic. I didn't even know what he meant at that point. And he meant manually write the S's down, not use a plugin. And I sat in there for a minute. He went out to have a smoke or something in the hall in Metropolis. I went out the door and said, "I don't know what I'm doing." And that's one of the best things I've ever done. So I went, "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to waste your time. Can you show me?" He went, "Yeah, of course, man." Came in, boom, 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 showed me what he's doing. He said, "I prefer using Pro Tools." And I was like, I'd really like to learn Pro Tools. He said, "Oh, come over. I'll show you. I'll show you everything." And I was like, "Oh my God, incredible." So arranged a time, went over, he wasn't there. Went back home, did it again, he wasn't there. And this went on for like maybe 6 months, because he was busy, he was doing stuff, and I was some kid, what the hell? He was killing it then. He was doing some massive, massive stuff. And then one day we aligned, and he was in, and I came, and he spent 10 minutes showing me stuff, and that was it. Because he worked a lot with Damien Taylor, who was the greatest Pro Tools operator at that time, who's now a really great mate. And we actually worked with Damien and things. But and I learned this incredible stuff, and then took that away and ran with it and did nothing else. I'm saying nothing else for 5 years. Get out of bed, swing around out of bed, and my rig was in front of me, and work, and then go back to bed. I did nothing else. 12 hours a day. Just Pro Tools and drumming and making stuff and working for who I could. And that was it.
Has your career been a series of, small, like, resume builders, or as you would say, CV builders?
Yeah, never had to smash. Never had the like definite smash.
There's never been like the moment where it's just like, I have arrived.
No, absolutely not. I've never had that kind of like, "Oh, you did that. Cool. Here's all the work." It's always been like, "Oh, wow, you've done 500 things that are all fairly big. Maybe we could give you a shot at this now." "Oh yeah, okay, that went well," or something. It's tough.
Yeah, but would you agree that sticking around and making it work over time has been an advantage, because people, like, they know you, you have experience, and you don't stop, and you just don't quit?
Well, I didn't realize I had a reputation of any kind, and my manager was chatting, and they went, "Oh, he's great. He always delivers. It's always great. It's always on time, and it's always no problem." It's like, oh, that's nice. But we both know that doesn't matter necessarily. If the A&R has to justify why they use someone, they're going to use someone they don't have to justify. So this is a very tricky thing to navigate. But I've had a lot of good fortune and work out and do incredible stuff now. The nice thing I've got, which I will say, is without sounding like a total tool, I don't sort of feel like a fraud. I feel kind of like that long period has made me go, okay, well, I feel comfortable coming in and doing this for you and not feeling like I don't really know what I'm doing. I can offer what I know and be comfortable with that because I think it's probably okay. And I don't feel like I've just been launched into this thing. I have no idea what I'm doing, which I know people get, and they style it out and do incredible work or die, crash and burn. But I don't feel like that. I feel like I've built it up over 25 years of doing stuff consistently and always delivering and doing my best. So that is, like you say, that's advantageous. That feeling of calm is good.
It is, but I mean, if you could look, and I know this is tough, but look at yourself objectively and analyze, what do you think it is that you're bringing to the table time and time again? You named a few things that other people have said, but what do you think it is?
I really give a shit, and people notice. I really do. I really, really give a shit. But I also very, very, very strongly know that it's not my record. That is the good combo, I think, for working. Really care, but realize it's not your record.
But when you realize it's not your record, what's the approach?
The approach is to realize, it's the complicated thing, isn't it? Depending on the like Atmos is an amazing example of it, because that's almost a finite thing most of the time. If I'm doing something for Eno, it's make something amazing, end of brief. If I'm doing something for Universal where the artist isn't involved and the producer's not involved and the mixer's not involved, it's making an immersive version of this that in binaural is absolutely identical balance-wise, tone-wise to the original, which is hard, but you can do it, and is a really cool immersive experience that was worth doing rather than being random. And so that's a finite thing. I know what that job is. I'm going to do this thing which is fully respectful and is your thing. If it's production, it's sitting and what is this going to be, which you don't necessarily know, but the artist might not have any idea either, or they might need help going one way or the other. But it's achieving what you think is best for them. Pretty much always is my approach. And how will this be the most awesome thing you could do with them? That would be how I'd kind of approach most things. Certainly mix wise as well, because you have to have mixed preferences, but sometimes your mixed preference isn't relevant to that job. They've got a vision, which I had recently with a band, where what they liked, I genuinely thought sounded terrible, like awful. But it was a vision they had, and it wasn't stupid. It wasn't like nothing. It was consistent with what they liked. I was like, okay. I had to bend my ears around to go, let's make that sound like a record, which I found really difficult. But okay, I'm not just stamping my print on it, which I know I do, which I could do. My preference, it was working out, this isn't mine. This is what they want. I did the first version that was what I wanted, and they were like, and you could see they were polite but uncomfortable. So I redid it quickly to be what I thought they wanted, which they loved, and then brought it to be more like a record. So that's the approach I'll bring if I can. So
the approach is just always be willing to compromise and see it from their perspective.
Yeah, I tend to work like that best. Other people don't and do amazingly, but maybe I'd be better off just being a hard ass and only doing one thing and having a niche, and that might be great, but I don't know, that hasn't happened.
So you've spent a number of years playing drums, making records as an engineer, I assume as a producer in many respects as well. Yeah. When did the Atmos thing become part of your repertoire? I was so lucky. It's the one bit of like proper leap of faith luck that I've had that is cool. Is I was doing something for David actually, and he was like, it's stereo, it's just a stereo mix. I was like, cool. Oh, it's LCR, we need LCR. So I was like, for God's sake, it's like 1 day's notice or 2 days notice. So I called up my friend who is business manager at Genelec and said, I need to get an LCR rig. I just need it because I need it here. This happens a few times where it's suddenly an LCR thing. I don't have this facility to do. I need to just get a separate rig that is just LCR. I'll get a quick 5.1 box and I'm covered. Right, it's fine. And he went, oh yeah. You ever thought about Atmos? And I was like, this is before Atmos launched. This was in December 2020. I think Atmos officially launched kind of May 21, was it? Something like that. Where Apple made the announcement and pushed the labels to, there was no demand, zero demand. And I was like,
absolutely not. No, are you insane? And he was very reasonable and said, I think you'll absolutely kill this, and it's coming. And hear me out, and let's work out a deal with Genelec, because they want small rooms that can show you can do Atmos in. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I said, just come to Dolby, meet the guys, here's some stuff. So I, in the nicest way, don't care about surround and never have. I don't really have any affinity with surround. Intrinsically, I didn't like 5.1. It wasn't for me. I never got involved with it at all. But I heard the headphones, and I had a fold down that sounded exactly like the stereo mix. But when I heard it on speakers, I was like, oh my God, this is a portable format if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
I can have a surround mix and I can have a stereo mix. And something clicked to me and I went, I'm doing this. This is amazing. I need to know how to do this. This is incredible. This is a potential transferable format if you get it right. So I got the rig, which was a lot of money for me at the time. Got it installed, helped me set it up. And then I started doing some mixes. And I remember playing back my first mix in Dolby and it being absolutely effing terrible, and sit through the whole thing going, oh my God. And everyone politely going, me going, oh, I want to die. I'd done it from multi-track and done this 200 channel mix. I was like, oh God, this is appalling. And got back and redid it a different way and played it, and it was good. This whole approach. I talked to a few people about how can I approach this differently, and I had some incredible people. Matt Ward, who's an unbelievable guy here, technical genius, helped me a lot. Andy Bensett, Genelec, helped me a lot. My friend Scott Greiner, who's working for Dolby, who'd done quite a lot of the original, very, very good Dolby mixes, helped me a lot in concept. And I did a couple of things which have been amazingly helpful, which was I don't use the bed at all, anyway, apart from the other feed channel. No bed.
I love it. Yeah. I don't use the bed either.
Because I would like someone to play me a bed mix where the headphones are coherent, but I don't think you can do it. Maybe if you wall plant in position for that, actually. But anyway, so limiting with the headphones, and other reasons too. And also, Dolby released a white paper on this recently, bless them, about using dynamic objects instead of bed-based mixing. And I've done this from the beginning because the headphone coherence is unbeatable. And I started like this, and I've basically expanded my palette of things, but I'd still play my third mix I ever did, because I'm still thinking it sounds good, because it is what that job was done. I exactly match the mastering. I cancel the master against my stems, as much as I possibly can, to make it absolutely identical mastering wise before I start playing. So I've then got a coherent glued mix to play with, rather than just flinging stems around, which is what I hear quite a lot, which is not my approach, let's say diplomatically. I want a coherent thing that sounds like a record all the time. I want it to be a record, however it is. And so that approach right from the beginning has been brilliant. So I started there before my manager went to all the majors 2 weeks before Apple went, and he said, when Atmos hits, when you need Atmos, they're going, what Mos? When you need Atmos, my guy is ready to go. We're ready to go. So midnight on that call, I did my first major label single in Atmos, the day of the Apple launch. Oh my God, that guy. And my manager looked like a genius. They went, oh my God, this guy. And there's an incredible person at Universal who has amazing ears and is a great engineer, who was responsible for the Atmos QC. And she noticed that my mixes were coming in and were the same as the stereo mix. They sounded like a record. When they folded down properly, there was no crazy level changes or anything. It was coherent and getting more coherent and more like the stereo mix, which is great, because then the artist's going to prove it, because it's their mix still, but immersive. So they'll feel the immersive size, but it won't be a different balance. It won't be a different mix approach. It won't be a different mastering aesthetic. It's the same thing, this is like one angle of Atmos, by the way. It's not the only way to do it. I never say that.
Right.
My Eno mixes have no relation to the stereo mix at all.
Right.
But none.
Right. But this has been my challenge, is that Atmos, I don't think, is able to live up to its full potential in the current state of streaming, because there's a continual comparison with the stereo.
Yep.
So
it's
in the days
so
of
difficult.
and I'm with you. I was never a 5.1 person.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention to any of that shit.
Yeah.
I dismissed it flat out because I was like, where's this going?
Yeah.
In the days of SACDs or Blu-rays where there's an independent release, like, you know, if Dave Fredman's going to do a Flaming Lips thing, for example, he's not like really focused on matching what's going on in the stereo land. He's making a dedicated experience. And this is where I have a problem with the whole thing, is that we're being gatekept by this limitation of the stereo mix.
Yeah. So I did an album for John Hopkins recently, which is who I really love and respect. And we did the first album maybe a year or so ago, which he wasn't a fan of Atmos and immersive generally, but we worked it together and it was an incredible experience of like finding a new way through how to do what he was thinking, and it really worked. And he understood, he's so technically great. He understood what was going on and what it offered and how you could place in a different way than he had experienced before, and how you could make a great stereo mix too in binaurally. So that was fantastic. So the new album he made with the idea of it being spatialized. So I did a first pass and he came in and went, no, this sound, you knew everything was going to go. So we had this incredible experience of building something, but it's not the same as a stereo. It really isn't. It's super immersive. So when you get the binaural, I'm so happy with it because it's a different experience. It's like really different, which is killer. I love that. It wasn't constrained. There was no constraint. We didn't even match the mastering. It was like, let's let this be more dynamic because it's more exciting. And it's like, this is so freaking cool. And I don't get to do it that often because of what you're saying. I had a kind of other experience mixing a score for Marvel, the Spider-Man 2 game score, which is a really killer. It actually got Grammy nominated this year for one of the best scores. And it's an amazing score. The recordings are so insanely good. I was like, oh my God, when I got the stems. But there's 180 stems for these, like stems, not multi-track, and recorded in quad with canopy mics. And they folded those down for the stereo. So it's like, this is really interesting. I've never really done anything like this at all. I did my first pass, and there's an incredible engineer at Sony who masterminded all this, and he wrote back his comments, and I was like, oh God. I was like, oh my God, he's absolutely right about every single one. He's so good. But it wasn't, he loved the headphone mix. It was the speaker mix he was commenting on, which I've never had before. My speaker mixes like always sound like I thought as good as they possibly could, but he was picking up on this tonal differences in the way the orchestra sounded with how I spatialized it. And I was going, he's absolutely right. And I've never listened to it in that exact way before, because I don't know if you can do what he's saying. I don't know if it's possible. Because he wanted this exact tonal solidity that was in the original orchestral recording, but spatialized. I didn't know if you could do it. And I had to work out some new techniques I haven't really used before. And that was a massive learning experience, because the headphone mix was subsumed by the speaker mix, which I always like, very conscious to make the headphone mix as absolutely identical as possible to the stereo and fulfilling and never in any way compromised. So this was really difficult balance. I managed to do it, but it was very, very difficult mix for me. And I learned a load of new things, and that swung around and butted up to a bunch of new Eno stuff where I had to develop a whole bunch of new techniques I've never really done before, which basically effectively making a 7.1.4 sidechain, which doesn't exist, is kind of tricky. People think you sort of done that. So I get 7.1.4 compressors with a 7.1.4 sidechain in tools just to do these kind of moves that I needed to make for creative things. So like, as I'm sort of slightly deviating, but this constraint has flipped in different ways recently to be that very exacting stereo constrained one has actually leapt out to be super creative and do stuff that has nothing to do with the stereo mix really at all. More dynamic, more exciting, more interesting. And often with some of the pop stuff, and this is the very nice, like, I'm not trying to be snarky here, I'm making it worse than the stems are to match what's going on. Sometimes the mastering is so crushed, it's so massive, so loud, and so like constrained in some ways. Couldn't agree with you more is what I'm edging around to. my long blathery. That is
so many questions are popping up, not necessarily Atmos related, which I could go down the rabbit hole, and I'm going to hold off on that for a minute. Couple things that caught my attention. Your manager gets you work.
I should have a small shrine to him. He's changed my life completely.
Wow.
Completely. He's the best guy.
Because a lot of my friends have managers, and they just deal with the back end paperwork, contracts, negotiation, but they don't get them work.
Mark has done around 150 international meetings in the last year or so about Atmos.
Holy moly.
And so what I get from him is I get a sense of the state of it, which is interesting in the labels.
Mm-hmm.
It's an annoying deliverable. And that has to be said, I think, as an engineer to other engineers. It's seen as an annoying deliverable a lot. That's nothing particularly to do with the format or anything to do with it. It's just another box to tick in the getting something to market. So I understand, but the enthusiasm for it is tricky. I think people will agree who do a lot of it. I think they'll find enthusiasm varies within a small window of kind of meh. And some people love it, but it's not beloved within the record labels, I don't think, as a format.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and it seems that I still feel like we're early days.
We're early days, man. The biggest thing you've touched on already is approval. Why are we conforming to the stereo mix so much?
Right.
Because artists are approving on headphones, and they're not coming in and getting involved, and a lot of them don't care because they don't know what it is, because no one else can quite access it. But this is not going anywhere, and it's just the beginning of an amazing immersive journey for humans. But we're so early. We're so early, man.
And if I ran the world, I know it's very easy for me to sit here and say this, but damn it, Apple, come on.
Dude.
You've got Apple Music, and then you've got this whole separate classical operation. Why can't we have a dedicated streaming Atmos service for those that want to hear it? And then those that want to just stick to the stereo, fine.
And could it please, I love what Apple's done to push immersive, but Apple Spatial is the bane of my life as a mixing engineer working with incredible artists. I remember I was working with an incredible multi-Grammy nominated, actually LA-based artist, who said, I did his record. It was quite difficult because his entire mix bus was unkeyable. A lot of stuff without sidechain input, so it's very complicated to match the mastering, and even he actually hadn't even printed through the mix bus. I had to recreate the mix bus and the mastering, and it was super, super difficult. So I made it. He wrote back going, the speaker mix is great. The binaural is amazing. I don't know why you've done this spatial version, so we need to fix that. And I'm going, I have no control. I have no control of it. I have nothing. He didn't really believe me. He did understand in the end, but I was like, all we can do is change the Atmos mix and the binaural mix detrimentally, but it's not going to solve the main problem you're hearing, which is your entire front wall is spatialized, and I can't do anything about that.
We need to define this, because if you're in Atmos, you know exactly what we're talking about. But for the audience that doesn't have a clue, so
two different codecs.
Yeah, basically, Amazon and Tidal are operating on their base. When we make a binaural, and correct me if I'm saying anything in out of turn or incorrect, but essentially when we make our Atmos mix and we check our binaural mix and we approve that, that is what Amazon and Tidal listeners hear.
The binaural metadata passes through to that.
It all
codec.
passes through. When it goes to Apple, they throw all that out. All that metadata out, and they recreate it in their own image and liking.
It's a fold down that's then spatialized.
And it's just, it's why I think a lot of people get turned off to Atmos.
It's 100% why. I mean, I have an amazing friend, one of my dearest friends, who is one of the great heavy metal and rock producers, who's an insane mixer. He's so brilliant. He hates it. And I can't argue with him, because he goes, no, they're listening on Apple, and that's not my mix, and that's not the mix we did, so I hate it. And I'm going, well, I can't argue with you. It's
I
correct.
know. I know that Apple in one fell swoop, they're our greatest ally
and the biggest foe
and the biggest enemy at the same time, because they're not servicing what we're really putting out there.
But they're not they're not mad. They're not crazy. It does one thing amazingly, which is when you turn your head, I believe you 100% with the head tracking. It's phenomenal. But I also don't care when
some people hate that.
Music. Yeah. But it works. And what they're doing is what I thought when I first saw this. And I thought, you're probably making a virtual living room, aren't you? Mm-hmm. You want a virtual spatialized space. This is before the Vision Pro came out. And I said, the only thing that makes sense is you want to virtualize a space because it sounds good like that. If you have your TV over here and you put it over there and then you can look and it's sort of, but that's not music. That's not, you're changing the balance radically, actually, sometimes. I mean, there's actually a spreadsheet that's come out which shows you some of the balance changes, and it's up to 5.8 dB. If you put percussive elements up in the heights, dude. I mean, and that changes as well with Apple. But I mean, I'm so grateful for the push, but I just wish we had a music version where music mode, you click music mode, and even if it was just like turn the front wall off, I'd be a billion times happier. Even if it didn't, because I know that codec can't take the metadata, which is why they don't do it. They're not turning it off. It just can't, it doesn't have it. It's not available. So it's
So for those tuning into this is one of the reasons why people on the consumer side complain. It's one of the reasons why engineers complain. Apple is, like I say, they're our friend, but they're not fully taking care of us on this business, and it's really frustrating to the point where, and I'm really curious how you operate with this. I have all these friends that they've got the audio movers thing, and they've got to check the Apple thing, or they've got separate Logic rigs set up, and I'm like, why are you doing that? And they're like, well, so I can hear what the Apple thing's doing, and I'm like, but that's a moving target because that is changing. So I feel like a cowboy completely ignoring it sometimes. And I sometimes think, am I doing the right thing by ignoring this? But it seems like it's out of our control.
Truth time. Yeah. I mean, I have that opportunity to check it through Logic or through the renderer. When I check Apple Spatial through Audio Movers, for example, there's a bit of a pinch of salt. And and tonally, I love what Audio Movers do, but it's not the same as when I stream it. It seems quite a lot nicer. And the comparison between binaural and spatial isn't as radically different as it is, but it does show up the weird clustering you get if you have too much dense stuff in the rears that happens on Apple Spatial, and that can be helpful. You can hear the balance change. So I might, if I'm curious about whether what I've done might be a problem, I'll check it. But as a rule, I'm not glued to that at all, because exactly what you said, it's a moving target, and it's as best as they can do with what they're given. And it's a brilliant plugin. The app is just so well done for so many reasons.
Which app?
Audio Movers binaural render is great, but it's still not. I'm not living with that as my truth, if you know what I mean. I'm doing my other mix, and then I listen online, and I'm very rarely surprised with what I'm getting because of what I'm doing generally. But I have checked a few things. I'm very lucky to have a Sonos box, which has input, so I can hear this. I can get a consumer kind of picture on speakers, which is really, really revealing. That's extremely useful.
Do you have the Era 300? Is that
exactly?
What you have?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't happen to so apparently one of those, and I may be completely like saying something that I shouldn't be saying, but apparently there's units out in the world that exist that have Dante inputs that some people have and some people don't. Maybe
I can't remember if I can say any more than maybe. But if they did, that would be hella useful if you wanted to check your mix, right?
Would be hella useful.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow.
Well, I don't know what the vibe is on that. But
I don't either. But
yeah, if it did work with Dante Virtual Sound Card straight from a 5.1.4 re-render, that would be awesome.
I cannot confirm or deny the existence of that. I have heard of this, but I've never seen it.
definitely heard of the rumor, but that domestic use case I found to be the most useful thing, and the only thing that surprises me now. I put it in and go, oh no, this doesn't sound good. What? And everywhere, and I go back on speakers, and it have slightly readjusted me to go. It feels great on the speakers, but if I just tweak it so it doesn't do this, and then do the domestic check again and remove the problem, it's sometimes better. It's a more coherent thing. So maybe it's because it's amplifying issues more than a speaker mix will reveal sometimes, because you're getting this little crushed up array of speakers with loads of DSP doing stuff. I found it to be incredibly useful at improving mixes.
Yeah.
And I won't necessarily realize that. And now it's become like an absolutely solid part of my workflow. So check that thing, check it.
At the risk of having everybody drop off at this point,
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring up something that we were talking about before we started recording.
Oh yeah.
And because everything you've said so far, you and I are in agreement on.
Yeah, man.
In the world of Atmos, and I feel like I found my brother from another mother here. However, we differ on our opinion of the Dolby Curve used in tuning setups. So just to educate the audience who doesn't know, like when I set this room up here, Dolby came out and they tuned the room to a curve. Typically in a stereo room, you'd have a flat curve, but in this case, they do the Dolby curve for the Atmos thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found that it works for me, and we'll discuss why, but you have not enjoyed that, and you don't like that. And so you operate without it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I have the greatest respect for Dolby, and especially the room lineup is a pretty incredible thing. But for my taste, I have a completely non-Dolby setup, really, I guess. For me, this kind of more linear response has worked great. And that is, in the nicest way, means nothing. It means nothing. It's just what I like.
Right. It just helps you create a mix that translates the best out in the real world. With
my speakers, I've got 8341s, and I never really use them for stereo, but I'm absolutely in love with them from Atmos. For me, it's pinpoint precision, it's linear response, they're pretty full range. My bass management is almost non-existent on them, which is actually really interesting as well. Bass management is a really interesting thing when you're porting mixes around to different places, say mismatched sides and mains, and where the bass management is coming from and how high it is, and you can definitely localize it above certain frequency. Anyway, that gets very nerdy very quickly, but it's that's for me is great. But someone else might come in my room and go, "This is a nightmare."
Right.
This is an absolute nightmare.
And I want to clarify to those who are like, "Well, Matt, what's up with the curve on your side?" And as I was explaining before we started recording, it's working for me because, as I had explained it, in a flat room, I tend to mix dark. And in a Dolby Curve tuned room that's already got a little bit of, smoothing out of the top end, it sounds dark to me. Therefore, I push back and make things brighter. So it's a counterintuitive thing. It's almost like a little psychological trick. So when I take my mixes to a room that doesn't have the curve, that's a linear curve, and it's, relatively flat, my mixes sound accurate because I'm not mixing dark. I'm actually putting a little more high end in there.
This is the vibe. It's just like, I have no judgment on anyone's rig at the end of the day. Nothing.
And I'm in a funny room.
Yeah,
exactly. Funny ceilings, as you can see behind me for those watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I've got PMCs, and you've got Genelecs, and
which are almost opposite in how they disperse and everything, but it doesn't matter.
As long as the result is good. And I always say this, and that is, it doesn't matter how you cook the meal as long as it tastes good.
Exactly. It's just, there's so many crazy things with perception and sound, and it's just so, there's a really crazy YouTube video, which is terrifying as a mix engineer, really, that you might have seen it. It did the rounds loads, and it still pops up now and then on socials, where there's a kid's toy that says brainstorm. You seen this? You pull a little, it goes brainstorm. But if you think it's going to say green needle, it says green needle, green needle, brainstorm. And you can say green storm, brain needle. What you're expecting is what you hear. It's freaking insane. I found a few people who don't find it, but a lot of people are like, oh my God, what the hell? Your perception is just so easily changed. Like, I'm turning up 8 on this pool tech at 10K. Oh my God, I'm the king of EQ.
Yeah.
It's out.
I'm in bypass.
Yeah, I'm in bypass. It's a classic. Oh.
Well, so I'm gonna pull away from the Atmos thing for a bit. I'm gonna give the audience a reprieve.
Yeah, sorry.
So, making a living doing this, do you have a general comment about that? Like, how have you made this work?
2 things. I was thinking about this the other day. I was having a conversation with my friend who is a great engineer, and I was complaining a little bit. This was about a year ago, actually, complaining a bit. And he said, you're really successful, dude. And I was like, no. And he goes, how long have you been working in music? I said, well, 25, 30 years. And he sort of just told me off and tore strips off me. I was like, oh my God. Fair. It's like the understanding of keeping going this long and doing stuff is like, that's great, right? So you've managed to do a career and get paid and do it. And how you do that. So I started thinking, like, how's that being possible? And it's definitely 2 things. One, prioritizing and being brutal with prioritizing, which is really difficult, right? If you're kind of trying to be a decent person, if you don't prioritize the things that are going to advance what you do in exactly the right way and deal with everyone in exactly the right way, you will not work. It will go horribly wrong for you. I mean, I've been in the past in tears with double bookings because I don't know how to, I've accidentally done something schedule wise. That's the kind of level of sort of passion I get to getting it right and testing things and making things work and taking on the projects that make sense and others don't. Getting that priority. So it's absolutely, you are taking the job that moves you forward and you've also got to generate income. Some of these jobs will pay nothing, but they're an amazing thing, an amazing opportunity to do, and some of them are really well paid and useful. So you just, like, I was on another job and I got called to do Shakira. Can you come and do Pro Tools for Shakira? She fired everyone else. That was my gig for a while, doing Pro Tools, because I was very, very fast with Pro Tools, probably from drumming, and really, really, really quick, and I could real time do everything and be super, super, super fast Pro Tools. Just as it was dying, so I did these. The M-Box came out and that gig kind of disappeared because the assistants would do it slowly in the lounge, instead of paying £1,000 a day and a Pro Tools rig for an operator who's fast. That kind of job kind of died just as I came in going, I'm here. Yeah, I can do this. So, but I was in the middle of another job, so I had to negotiate leaving that other job to do the Shakira session because that was a massive gig and the other job wasn't. And that was harsh, but I had to suck it up. I've had those gut sinking kind of moments of having to let someone down because I have to do this. I cannot let this opportunity pass because they're so rare to get opportunities. You can't let them down. So that's really tough. I don't know if I've always done the right thing, but I've tried to, and I've tried to move things on and not make people feel bad and not make people feel like they're not as important. But what are you going to do? That's hard. That's the reality. It's like, you've got to manage your time somehow. And the other thing is kind of knowing what you're worth, which I definitely haven't always done properly. And you'd be surprised that when you can push back a little bit and kind of go, I'm doing all this stuff and could I increase my fee? And I've done this before and doubled my fee and people haven't even blinked, so you've gone, oh man,
I should have asked for 3 times as much.
I should have undersold myself so bad, which is not so much of a deal now, but in the past, you're just so grateful to be working. And like, oh my God, thank you very much. And in this incredibly, incredibly competitive field, it's like,
When did you get your manager?
This manager I've had for 11 years, I think.
Okay, so you're in the unique position where your manager tells everybody what it's going to cost, right?
Yeah, he deals with all of it. But we'll chat, we still chat. It's like,
you still strategize.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is the weirdest thing in this business. I mean, maybe other businesses are like it. I don't really know. But this one is like, your rate is just crazy. The flexibility of people's rates is insane. I mean, some people are just this much and other people are yo-yos. You you have to accommodate. And there's lots of ways now of doing things, but setting the rate is hard. It's really tricky.
Yeah. Do you feel that, I mean, you're dealing with international artists, but I mean, I've always looked at London and the UK in general as that's a particular, like any musical artist, I think, you know, the US is like this big, unknown, vast, giant monstrosity of a market. In the UK, like, it seems like it's not as difficult to get widespread success and build reputation. Would you agree with that?
I think it's a completely closed shop, like completely. Like for me to get in any way, which I'm barely in now, I feel really, is despite all the things I've done, which is pretty extensive at this point.
Mm-hmm.
In like 1 year, I had 5 #1 albums.
You're talking about the US?
UK.
Oh, the UK.
Yeah, so 1 year I had 5 #1 albums, no one cares. They weren't the right 5 #1 albums, so it doesn't matter. It's like, I'd mixed them and produced 2 and written something on 1, and no one cares. No one cares. At all. Nothing, no care whatsoever. Here, it's good if you make a lot of noise. I don't make lots of noise generally as a person. I'm sort of fairly reserved, which isn't the best move. You know, I don't have an Instagram really that I work on because I've been working so much, I don't do it. But I feel like probably that's a huge error now considering what I'm doing. So I'm going to look at that. But time-wise, I don't have to work out how to do it. But it's so weird here. It's just closed. There's lists in labels of people they will use. If you're not on the list, you won't get used. So luckily, I'm on the Atmos list, so I get used. I'm not on the stereo list, so I don't get used. But my stereo mixing is definitely more established than my Atmos mixing. You know, even though I do lots of great Atmos, I'm good for this. I can do this. And, you know, the same, I still won't even get a spec mix on some things because they won't risk using someone who isn't one of the top 5 people who get most mixes. It's like, it's very closed here, like very, very closed. Quite small and very closed. The other thing we have here, which is, I don't know if it's the same in the States, is the role of the producer is diminished to a ridiculous degree here because of economics mainly. But most of the productions that I will mix are the songwriter.
Interesting. Doing
the production. A lot of it. Loads and loads of it. Because I don't do too much band stuff. So other stuff like that is almost always the songwriter.
Yeah, it's interesting here because, you know, we've got these little pockets of ecosystems, Nashville, Los Angeles. I hate to say it, but San Francisco used to be a very cool ecosystem. It's lost its power over the years. There's still great stuff that comes out of San Francisco, but it's not what it used to be. And then of course there's New York to some degree, but in my brain, Nashville and Los Angeles are kind of the two places.
I just did my first Nashville Atmos, country stuff, which I don't tend to get. And I got sent this and I thought, okay, I'm going to check some out because I'm not just going to assume. I assumed it was going to be like almost like classical, like kind of super front heavy and kind of politely immersive. It's some of the best Atmos I've heard. It's absolutely unbelievably brilliant. So much of it. I was like, oh my God, they're going for it. And it's musical as hell and makes sense and it's beautiful. I listened to like artist after artist going, oh man, this is dope. It's so good. I hadn't really had that experience much listening to loads of Atmos, but it was like track after track after track. I was like, you guys are killing it. So I did a completely different kind of mix than I would have done if I hadn't checked it first. And the stems were outrageous and the recording was outrageous and everything was brilliant. I was like, yeah, okay, hats off.
Hats off to Nashville, man.
So like, good, Nashville. Holy shit.
Musicianship, engineers, like just.
But they were brave. They weren't doing like kind of polite Atmos. It was like immersive as hell and wicked and coherent and glued. But hearing the stems, I can kind of feel that that's in the recording. It's like done. It was amazing. I mean, I barely touched any of them. I mean, even a tiny bit, really tiny bit of something, but barely nothing. It was awesome.
Do you have kids?
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
I have one.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, and how old, if I may ask?
Nearly 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
My kids are we're almost an empty nester household.
Oh,
and
man.
Kids are, I got one in college and I got one who's like a year out from going to college, essentially.
Oh, wow.
I'm just curious if you feel like your focus and dedication to your family, do you feel like that challenges your career at all?
It's been a massive challenge because I'm a single parent, and we share.
Oh.
Absolutely very amicable. I'm in an absolutely crazy situation where I bought the flat above my ex for my daughter, basically, because that was the best thing for her. And we're very amicable and it's been incredible. But for her, and fine, it's all fine. So yes, it's unbelievably challenging because 2 days a week I can't work because of school pickups. I can do 3 hours in the studio and then I have to go to school pickups and come back. So that's changing as they get older, but it's been so hard. So I have a rig at home, which is what I'm talking to you from now, which is an exact mirror of my studio rig. And that in itself, as you can imagine, is something to keep on top of. But I've done a lot of work here, mainly all the prep stuff and then pre-mixing, and I never done an Atmos mix on headphones ever. It's always in front of speakers, and mastering, I'll do most everything on Audacity, and I've got a phonitor kind of thing, which is a great little setup, and I'll get most of the way, but everything finishes on speakers, everything. So
yeah,
but this has been life-changing, but that's the compromise. I sit at home doing some pretty big stuff, and then finish in the studio because that's my life.
Yeah. Do you have a message for other audio professionals on this topic of parenthood?
Oh man. Yeah. Music's not important on that level.
On that level. Yeah.
And it's so easy to ignore them. It's so easy, or make them feel like they're not important compared to what you're doing, because what we do is so engrossing, and there's no excuses when you work at this kind of level. As you know, there's no excuses. It's not like, oh, I've got to go home to my kid, or oh, she's ill, something, or I need to do this. There's not really excuses if you're not working close with someone you really know and blah, blah, blah. Some artists, fine. But, if you're delivering something to a label kind of that on a service level, they don't really care. You need to deliver it. There's a deadline if you're doing stuff. So you have to work that out without making your kid feel like they're not important. But that's just incredibly difficult to manage. I find it super, super, super hard. And something gives, always.
Yeah.
Something will give, because it's impossible to give 100% to something and then 100% to something else, because the maths doesn't work.
Yeah, I got to say, having my place in my home has really allowed me to get away with a lot of stuff, which has been fantastic. But kudos to you, man, buying the flat above, like dad's upstairs, mom's downstairs.
Yeah, she's transformed.
That's fantastic.
It's wild, and I'm gonna move my studio home. The whole thing.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I got to do it because it's too much. But yeah, it's this idea of buying a bit more time, however I can. I have traveled to my studio, travel back. I'm there. I don't want these problems anymore. And also, the weird thing is, since COVID, people don't really come so much anymore. Not really. And London's really, really, really expensive. I'm talking to someone in San Francisco, exactly what I'm talking about, but it's really expensive. The rooms are small. Everything's small. Everything's expensive. People are working remotely so much now. I'm just thinking, I can do this now. I can move back out.
It sounds like you're making it work and keeping the family like prioritized as much as possible.
As possible. You can never do a perfect job on this, because this is not the kind of gig which lets you. You just can't, because
it's a juggle, right?
It's an insane juggle. It's not a 9 to 5. It never will be. If you're just starting out, it's tough.
It is tough.
It's tough. I always used to say, explains. I have another thing, which is like, I have recently realized I as everyone jokes, oh, everyone's got it, but I've sort of found out a lot of the explanation of why I'm like I am is ADHD, which has been quite an interesting journey, very interesting. And not what I thought it was, and in huge denial about it. And eventually I've realized that this is kind of the journey I'm on, and it's fascinating. But there's some huge benefits to this, which is this hyper focus, which I didn't realize what it was. But, you know, I will sit for 20 hours without moving, doing one thing, and it's fine. I can do that. But also, you know, you get all the downsides and the other problems with it. But there are some real benefits to this for what we do. That hyper focus in some way is useful.
I mean, was that an official diagnosis, or is that self-diagnosis?
Yeah. It's via a professional, but it's quite interesting. It's a very odd journey, but very interesting. And there's lots of plus sides, which I didn't realize, and loads of terrible downsides, which are not great for music. But when you know what's going on, it's useful. There's like I have this crazy memory, so I memorize all the Pro Tools shortcuts, like most of them. So because it's great, and with the drumming, so I had this facility with Pro Tools, which was really great. That was a big deal. That meant that I could jump in anywhere and be kind of insanely fast, and people will all be like, "Oh, what the hell's going on here? Oh, everything's happening." I'd always finish something before someone said it, and that people are like that in the studio. They like you remove the kind of limitation of the gear, and people could just work. So that was really cool. That's been quite a bonus throughout the journey. And now I don't really think about it and don't do it too much, and I don't care. I just work and don't think about it. But I'm remembering, like, you know, 10 years ago, it was a big deal. It was like keeping up the practice of being like editing and so. I mean, I don't really do any editing anymore. I don't really do any tuning for people much anymore or anything like that. It's not, I'll do a different thing, and we'll hire my assistant will do this stuff, and it's a different world now, which is great. But I do remember all this stuff. You're bringing it back, kind of this journey of how do I manage stuff, and it was to finish quickly and get home is what I'm edging towards. And this is there has been a noticeable lack of procrastination, which means I've managed to do parenting because I'll do everything and deliver and go home.
So we're about out of time, but you're not running an Instagram account officially.
Not really, no.
So do you have a website?
There's emreaudio.com, but it's just a bunch of, I did all this. But my Instagram is at Emre Ram.
Okay.
And I have stuff on there.
I'll put that in the show notes.
My band has an Instagram, which is a band called Ill Considered, which is where I release it's just an improv trio. We just go and improv around the world, which has been the absolute most incredible journey. Just played in Shanghai and Beijing and Montreal and do a lot of stuff in Europe and go and play all these festivals, just no rehearsal, no music. We just go and improv, and it's a massive release. It's so different than what I normally do.
I'll let you go and get on about your day, but wow, man, thank you so much. It's great to talk with you, and we have to thank Ian Shepherd for the introduction.
Yeah, and blame him for the blathering and how much he acts on. Sorry.
No, it's been good. I've been enjoying it. So, but thank you again, and you take care.
Yeah, take care. Thanks, man.